Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up, the podcast for marketers working in early and late stage startups. Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to Fired Up. My name is Morgan McClintock, and I'm joined today by Nicole Pytel. How are you, Nicole?
I am great, Morgan. This is one of my favorite episodes of the year. It is the predictions episode. So
Hooray!
Very excited.
This is brilliant. We love this season. Last time we talked a little bit about your content marketing predictions as we went through some of the stats for 2026. I just posted my predictions for next year. So what we thought we would do is sort of dive through them. Before we do that, why don't we just sort of see how we did last year? And I'm looking forward to this because I have a sneaking suspicion we did quite well.
One of my new holiday season favorite traditions is going through your predictions and seeing how many of them you get right, because sometimes you're on the mark and sometimes a little off.
Yeah, last year, not so great. I think I predicted that TikTok and B2B would be really big in 2024. And yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah, a little off the mark.
All right, let's see how we did. Well, okay. One of the predictions was that startup marketing staff churn, say that quickly, will increase. And, we'd seen a year of efficiency last year, and our startup marketing outlook sort of suggested that would carry on. And I felt that, okay, as we look at 2025, there's just going to be more need for efficiency, which can mean, reducing your size of your team. And that team then sort of gets burnt out. People want to take a career break, etc. And I looked for some data on this one. There's not a lot of sort of hard data, but anecdotally, I got to say, we've seen amongst our clients, and then if you just flip open on LinkedIn, big changes in marketing teams, sometimes whole marketing teams. I remember at the Q1 of this year, whole marketing teams being replaced at a stroke just to sort of change something up. Not that they were doing anything, out of the norm, but just a need to do something. So I do think that this year we're seeing a lot of churn.
Yeah, unfortunately, you were right on this one. And you're right, we don't have a lot of hard data, but same thing. I open up LinkedIn and there's a lot of talented people out there that are looking for work right now. So unfortunately, this one is true. Not a shock, but sad to see.
Yeah, well, what do you think about this coming year? Is this going to carry, this isn't a prediction, but do you think, I kind of feel like same again?
I feel like it could be. I'm afraid to say it. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I'm wrong there, but I don't know. I think while the shiny newness of AI has worn off, I think there's still a lot of companies out there that think maybe it can do a little bit more than it can and are still maybe looking to replace like entire marketing functions with AI. I think that could play a role. And I think a lot of folks are just burned out. It's been a tough few years. There's been a lot of work, especially in the startup world where you're a one-person band or a very small team, and it's a lot to take on. So unfortunately, I think we might see a little bit more of the same.
Yeah, it's fair. Second prediction was SEO will be just fine in the face of AI search, and the best practices of SEO to create neutral, in-depth educational content are exactly what will be surfaced with AI search.
You got it. Our growth team has been on this all year long, sharing things with us at Firebrand and sharing things with our audience as soon as we're figuring out what's going on in this Wild West. And from what we're seeing, and yes, there are some things that are GEO specific, ways that you can structure your content, add some FAQs, those competitor listicles, that winter corporate page that I think everyone is copying right now. There's some stuff that's GEO specific. But what SEO still is all about authority, expertise, trustworthy content. And the same applies to GEO. When at the end of the day, as from what we know about ChatGPT and the like, they just want to surface good information. And that's what Google and Bing are trying to do as well.
Yeah, it's been a massive year for SEO and then GEO teams, lots of change, lots of experimentation. Very exciting. But I think the fundamentals, as you say, are still there. And the companies that have been investing in SEO for years are suddenly looking like heroes when it comes to AI search. And for good reason. They've put the money in there and the effort. This time last year, there was a bit of an ABM backlash, and we predicted actually it would, in fact, deliver, and the backlash would be short-lived or sort of misplaced. And then I did a little bit of digging into the numbers. The ABM market is actually growing. 71% of marketers are using some kind of ABM. We have seen just a real big pickup in signals-based marketing, and that's going to carry on this year. Feeling like we nailed this one.
You're 3 for 3. Good job.
I love it. And then I'd also predicted when it comes to podcasting, the rise of podcasting has been huge. I mean, remember, we saw a lot of it around the election and when it comes to sort of politics and that kind of thing. But alongside that, we predicted that programmatic podcast advertising would increase from 9% of total audio advertising. So this isn't where the host says a few kind words about our sponsors. This is where you can go on to Trade Desk or what have you and programmatically sort of plug in your audience. I'm trying to reach these people, and then sort of place your audio ads in front of, podcasts where you don't have a direct relationship with them. And so that's why you're getting those ads like, this podcast is sponsored by such as, it's not read by the host. Well, in 2025, eMarketer estimates that the percentage of digital audio advertising that is programmatic will increase to 30%. So from 9 to 30%.
That's a big jump. Did you think the jump was going to be that big when you made this prediction?
No, I thought maybe it might double. I thought that people might take a bit of time to sort of get comfortable with the more sort of programmatic buying of this kind of ad. Because one of the great things about podcasting is that sort of intimacy with the host. And one of the reasons that podcast advertising is so effective is that the host is reading it. And let's not forget, like, podcasting is big, but it, in terms of total market, total audience, is still fairly limited. So the big money, I didn't think that there was enough sort of scale there to really sort of get the big money. But boy, this went off like a rocket.
It did. It'll be interesting a year from now to see what it's at.
Huge. I think a lot of our audience here will be considering adding in podcast advertising into their media mix just to try it. Even if they haven't done it before, it's becoming more accessible, and that programmatic sort of opens up the aperture there. I'm excited about this as a medium. I think this one was a gimme, but the AI slop won't stop, we had predicted, because we'd been starting to see it last year. And wow, it was just a tidal wave this year.
Yes, this probably was a gimme. I was really hoping you were wrong. I knew you weren't wrong, but I was hoping you were wrong. And we have seen some really, really bad slop this year. I hope that stops in 2026, but it's everywhere. You're right. Web, paid, email, SEO, PR, organic social. I mean, just it was everywhere. Guys, stop. It's bad. You know it's bad. Everybody reading it knows it's bad. Everybody knows you didn't write it. Stop with the slop, please.
Yeah. I've started seeing it in emails from people, like, AI generated emails in response to my email. I've seen it in RFP requests coming into our agency. The same questions, or very structured. Here are questions I think I should answer, whether the people will actually want this information or not. It's just been everywhere. Too much. It's been a tough year. I think it's been a tough year for marketers who don't want to come across as a Luddite and sort of push back against it, because we've talked so many times about how being AI enabled is critical for marketers on this show. But, draw a line for marketers where they're investing in their craft and really taking the time to handcraft the blog posts or the playbooks or whatever material that, LinkedIn posts feels old-fashioned almost, but I hope that they'll get rewarded this year. This has been bad. So far, I'm 5 for 5, feeling very good. I'll agree that last one was a gimme. Threw in one here, the AI tool Perplexity would lose the search race, mainly because, I felt at the time, this is a company where the CEO's out there really sort of pushing back on journalism. They're very good at getting in some stunts and stuff, but just fundamentally not understanding the impact of the tool on all the journalists that are creating the content on which it is reliant and not rewarding them, summarizing articles from the New York Times, etc., not really creating the citations, whatever. I just felt, come on, you're not playing fair. Plus, it wasn't at scale. And so I thought, okay, let's be a little bit aggressive in this. And boy, I was wrong on this one, completely wrong.
You were. I mean, everybody, you can't bat 1,000 all the time. It's okay.
Yeah. Perplexity is gaining usage. ChatGPT, Gemini all rose from about 2.7% of the market in January to 6.4% in October. So it's still small against Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT, but it's picking up market share. So hats off to them on that.
Hats off to them. And, in a lot of our client reports that we do, and we look at where that AI traffic is coming from. I mean, ChatGPT is the 800-pound gorilla, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But Perplexity is usually number 2. Again, a much smaller number, but we're seeing quite a bit of client content being cited on Perplexity. So, yeah, you were wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. When it comes to those AI reports, and you can see in GA4 and now in HubSpot, I'm going to bet Perplexity is number 2 for most of the people listening to this show. And it is driving conversions. So in some of the visibility models, you get to choose which LLM you want to assess against. And even down to, do I want to Sonnet or what have you in Claude or Haiku, etc. You should choose Perplexity in there, because looking at what Perplexity or ChatGPT are doing, those are really critical. Okay, so I think that's 85%. So I think I actually did better than last year.
Well done. You did way better than last year.
You're very kind. Let's talk a little bit about what we think is going to come up in 2026. So, look, I am going to declare some bias in this, having been a PR guy for 30 years and, has died several times during my career. But PR is back, and I think spending will go up. We're seeing it. Why do I think this? Executive visibility is key, and I've actually got a specific one on that. But buyer journeys are longer. You just got to build your brand awareness. I think people are recognizing that. And the impact of journalistic sources on AI search is now being recognized and then being sort of assimilated into marketing strategies and PR strategies. And so consequently, it's getting budget, because it's always been important. But now I think people have got another reason to invest in PR.
Yeah, I think GEO was kind of like the cherry on top for it. But I think credibility is so important. Brand awareness is so important. And PR gives you those two things. We're still in that era of people don't want to get it wrong, where they have FOMO, fear of messing up. And I think it just really helps. If you're going to go make a business case for a vendor, if you can show them some media hits or some great executive visibility, it just adds a little bit of credence to the stakeholders that you're going back to and getting buy-in from. So I agree with you. Our PR team is very, very busy, and I think they're going to continue to be quite busy throughout 2026.
Yeah. And another anecdote, like I spoke to a startup yesterday. They were looking for a new marketing partner. She told me that the process that she'd gone to find us was she had put in her prompts into several different LLMs. What is the best, start marketing PR firm? Come up with a list, antagonistically asked each of them, why didn't you have these ones on your list? And got it to kind of boil down to, a short list, and then put all of those in and sort of got, those are the ones that she reached out to. So, this is a data point of one, but a sophisticated buyer using multiple LLMs in quite an elaborate way to sort of bench test, pressure test their short list. And I'm going to bet everybody's prospects are doing something similar.
They are. We've talked on previous episodes about how these AI platforms are almost like a recommendation from a human. Like, where should I go to dinner? Or, what should I do this week? And it's almost like, Google reviews or G2 reviews on steroids, because you can kind of poke and prod at it. And why isn't this vendor on your list? Or, what's going on over here? I guarantee you a lot, especially in tech, a lot of buyers are doing this.
Yeah. So speak to prospects and find out. But that, I think, is part of the fueling behind PR. It's not the only one. So second prediction, that more execs will be visible. So I've said like 5 out of 5 of the last PR prospects that I've spoken to have asked for executive visibility, mainly for their CEO. We want to raise the visibility of our CEO on LinkedIn, on podcasts, in bylines, at shows, etc. And LinkedIn has published its own research that says that a high-profile CEO correlates with an increase in performance in sales, because if that CEO makes a connection request and they're well known, people are more likely to accept it. If the CEO is high profile and comes in, she's going to close the deal. So that makes intuitive sense. However, I have a feeling that not all CEOs, it really fits their style. And I think, companies are just going to scale this out to their whole sort of exec board. Here's more spokespeople. So I think the opportunity here is going to get a lot more competitive.
I agree. And, part of being a thought leader is having leading thoughts. And when everybody's trying to have leading thoughts, you better have, a good strategy, a good point of view, a good grasp of what your platform is. Please do not go the AI slop route. You will be visible, and not for good reasons. So, yeah, I think we're going to see this go up quite a bit. I'm actually kind of surprised it took this long. It's not like LinkedIn's anything new, but it's interesting. It seems like it's come out of nowhere. I would have thought it might have started sooner, but I think it's just going to continue to skyrocket next year.
Yeah, agree. I mean, it's always been some senior execs have always liked doing it. And it's always been part of a senior leader's role to sort of be the ambassador for the company. But I just think there's a recognition internally that sort of spending time promoting yourself almost and your thoughts isn't just for your own career. It's also beneficial to the whole organization. So they've sort of got permission to do it. And in fact, for very early stage companies, the investors, VCs, are really pushing their CEOs to get out there and spend time on this. Amid all the other things you've got to do, this is one of the things that the CEO really should be leading the charge on. I think it's just becoming more acceptable, and we're seeing the data, the results that come from that. My next prediction here is that LLMs will start to share some visibility metrics. At the moment, total black box. You've got no idea about the search volume behind particular prompts or even particular categories. You just don't know. But I think that will start to change as the LLMs, and I'm particularly thinking about ChatGPT here, start to roll out more paid programs. They need to monetize. You see all the commitments that ChatGPT or OpenAI is making. It needs revenue. And one of the ways it can get revenue is through sponsored responses. And how are they going to get that? They have to share some data so that you can kind of know what prompts are worth sponsoring and justify the costs of that. And so I think you'll start to see that opening up this year.
Agreed. And they have to. I mean, nobody is going to put ad spend into a black box. So they have to. I think they will do the bare minimum. But I also think there will become kind of this cottage industry of people trying to take what little grains of knowledge they can get and trying to piece that together to try and kind of figure out the rest of it. If you can figure out cost per click on this type of prompt versus that, I feel like there's going to be a bunch of people trying to work backwards and kind of figure out the puzzle. So yes, I think they will start sharing it, but I think it will be as little as possible to bring the ad money in.
Right. And it's going to be frustratingly different for each LLM, I think, what they count, like the size of a prompt. Like when they say a prompt, it's not just those exact words. It's a cluster of words around like prompts that are similar, but how similar is similar and what's the response rate? I think that in the detail is going to be really frustrating. And so I would imagine that the AI monitoring tools are going to try to extract that because it's going to be on the paid side, not on the sort of search side. They're not going to publish something like Google Search Console data for you out of the goodness of their heart. They don't need to do that. So we'll see some of it. It'll be more than what we've got. It'll be less than what we want. But on the topic of AI sort of visibility monitoring, I think that the leaders will start to emerge here. If you think about traditional search, you're thinking about Moz and SEMrush and Ahrefs. And so who's going to be the SEMrush of AI visibility? It might be SEMrush, which has just recently been acquired by Adobe. So, Adobe thinks so. But there are a ton of emerging brands here that are seizing on this opportunity. New ones are launching every day. We've obviously spoken to SEMrush, but we've spoken to a bunch. We particularly like two of them, Scrunch.com and Gumshoe. We like those guys, but there's Profound and Bluefish and Ottily. There's a ton. And I think this time next year, we'll start to see the leaders emerge in this space.
I think we will. And I think this will be particularly interesting for startups because SEMrush is going to come with a SEMrush price tag. So if you can't afford that price tag, there's plenty of other options that, are just as helpful and arguably just as good. Great features, same type of thing. It will be interesting. Obviously, to your point, Adobe thinks SEMrush can do this since they have just acquired them. You have to wonder if maybe you buy a couple of them and see where you net out. Like, what is Scrunch versus Gumshoe's data? Maybe that gives you a more comprehensive picture because all of these things right now, every single one of them is working off of synthetic prompts, getting this data from ChatGPT, Perplexity. It's all synthetic. So, none of it's concrete. They're all doing it the exact same way. So I think it's just going to be whatever fits in your budget, whichever features you like best, how good is the self-serve capability, that kind of thing. But yeah, this is going to be an entire thing.
Yeah, I mean, just that case in point, they do have different philosophies. So one of the issues there is literally, are my results the same as your results? They're not, are they? Because we've got different search histories which it remembers. So therefore, is the data that these tools are spitting out, is it representative of what the prospects are doing? So company like SEMrush, how is it solving that? Well, they have a panel of people searching, and they are sort of like a Nielsen collating all that data and trying to sort of say, okay, we've amalgamated the data from lots of different people, and here's the sort of results. Now, I think that starts to break down when you're searching on very specific distributed SQL database topics that, your panel is just, you've got one person looking at that or none. Others, like Gumshoe, are coming up with personas and, here's my prospect, and sort of appending that to the top of the search, the prompt, saying, imagine I am a database administrator with all these things, and here's my question. So that they're sort of trying to normalize the history by introducing the persona up front in the prompt so that they can kind of get as lifelike a response as possible, which I think is another really smart way of doing it. But, two companies tackling the same problem in different ways, and we'll see which one pans out. So I think, very exciting. So to your point about, hey, pick up a couple of them. Great, good idea, because you're going to get different data out of each. On this topic, I think this is probably the safest one, that GEO is going to get budgeted, and approaches will standardize. We have seen a wild west of tactics when it comes to GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, also called AEO by some. For example, you have mentioned FAQs, okay? And like now you go to most product pages and they've got little FAQ section on the bottom. But then there was a LLMs.txt file that was trying to be a standard, bit like robot.txt, that you would sort of provide the schema in your header of your website to try and say to AI crawlers, hey, here's my site, look at this, don't look at this. An emerging standard. But the LLMs don't have to use it. We're just trying to encourage it. And I saw a lot of pushback from SEOs about the performance of those. So some of the tactics are going to kind of blossom and die. Others are going to emerge and stick and be replicated. But I think this year I want to come up with a baseline of approaches that if you do these, you can be pretty sure that it's going to have a measurable impact. And so the measurement needs to be consistent, and the tactics need to be consistent, and the weighting and the LLMs need to be consistent. There's a lot of things that need to align to make that happen. But I do think we'll start sort of settling on, here's the playbook of things that you're expected to do.
Agreed. I do think this is probably your gimme for the year. But, 2025, there was a lot of guidance because marketers just didn't know. Like, they did not know what to do. And things were changing so quickly. And I know our teams were on top of it and saying, hey, this is something that we just spotted, or this is a new thing that we're trying out, or here's this new best practice that we're seeing anecdotally working. Let's incorporate that into the strategy. So it was kind of like coming up with the recipe as you're cooking and kind of like throwing ingredients in and seeing if a cake comes out. I do think the approaches will standardize. I think a lot of what we saw in 2025 was trying to arm marketers at all levels with an answer for the question from the board or the CEO, what are we doing about AI search? You are my marketing team. What are we doing? Everybody's talking about it. And I know we were trying to give our clients an answer to that question. I think now part of the answer is, well, we're doing this. And if you give me some budget, we can do that and do even more, because we've learned about more that can be done. So I think it definitely will become part of the budget in 2026. I think it was just so fast and furious in 2025. There wasn't even time to budget. It just kind of got rolled into SEO or marketing as a whole. And now it has to be a line item, because we are seeing, in our client reporting, the clients that do some GEO work versus some clients that don't, it is a drastic difference. It's got to be part of your marketing strategy for 2026, and it's got to have some budget behind it.
100%. The next one here, this is a bit riskier, I think, is that brands will host AI versions of their websites. And what do I mean by that? You remember back in the day when people started browsing websites on their phones like lunatics, and you had to, as a website manager, host like an alternative version of your website, and you often even had its own domain, m dot something. And then we had, what was it called? AMP, like a way of producing websites that was more deliverable over mobile, more optimized for mobile. And now, of course, they're sort of responsive and you've got one website. But I think in a similar way that was a moment in time, we're going to see brands create AI versions of their websites that are a mirror of the site, but they don't have all the images and the videos, etc. They are purely a schema nicely laid out for an AI crawler to kind of consume. They could have a load of extra information and pages that are all about optimizing for GEO, tons of reports and FAQs and all this stuff that you don't want on your human-facing visual site, but you do want the LLMs to read and synthesize and regurgitate to your prospects. And so this is a way of doing that. It's a tactic for GEO. And how does that work? Well, there are companies, Everything Machines is one. They've sort of going to cache your website. I think Scrunch has got a similar thing. But, maybe your CDN will have one, or maybe it could be some kind of plugin for the CMS. But I do think this sort of two versions of your site. And for GEO people, that means you can really go to town with extra content on your AI version that is specifically for GEO. That could even be AI generated, because a human is not going to read it. And that's going to help you rank more highly in AI search. That's the projection.
It's an interesting thought. It does make me wonder, though, if the AI platforms will see this as kind of their version of keyword stuffing. Like, what if you created a keyword stuffed website just for Google? it wouldn't work. We'll see on this one. I could be eating humble pie like a year from now, and everybody's got an AI version of their website. I just don't know.
It's very early days on this as a tactic. But, you have seen people think, well, what's going to happen to websites overall if people are just using AI search and never coming actually to your domain when they make their decisions? And so, I think that lends some credence to this as a tactic. I can see this working. Could it be long-term? Maybe not, because you probably see them recombine. But anyway, this one has caught my eye recently. Here's another one. I think this is more of a wish than a prediction. That the AI slop will stop. Last year, I said it would not stop. This year, I'm going out on a limb and saying all that purely AI-generated content and the comments and the images, etc., will die down significantly because audiences are not going to invest their time in consuming content if the brand hasn't invested time in producing it.
Boy, I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. I think you might be partially right. I think some brands will definitely take their foot off the gas pedal and be like, look, let's be real. This is terrible. We've got to stop publishing this. I think other brands will just keep on going. I really, really do. Maybe it's for budgetary reasons. Maybe it's just they want to say they're an AI first company and this is how they're doing it. Whatever the reason, I think the AI slop will still be out there. Hopefully it's more of like a little rip current than a tidal wave, because I think brands are getting it and it's kind of hard to quantify. I think that's part of why brands are still doing it, because I don't think they've seen definitive proof that it's hurting pipeline or hurting the bottom line. That could be part of it, but I think we all know common sense wise that garbage that you don't even want to read, you couldn't even be bothered to create it. Like, who the heck is going to come and consume it, especially as zero-click searches go up, things like that. The pool of people coming and consuming your content is just smaller, at least on your website. Hopefully they'll get it. AI enhanced, that's where it should be at. If you're totally dependent on AI, that is passé. That is so last season. So please make the AI slop stop.
Yes, a wish. Let it come true. Let this be true. And this time next year, we'll be celebrating that this has happened. Signal-based advertising will become mainstream. What do I mean by that? Signal-based advertising means de-anonymizing the traffic coming to your website. It means enriching that. I think normally at the company level, you can sort of do it down at the contact level, enriching it, using this sort of intent data, web scrapers, and LLMs, just to sort of, all these things are going to become far more accessible. And it means you're sort of picking up the signals from the market, and then you can advertise to a narrower audience that are in market because the information is out there. They fit your ICP and they are looking, they're on your website, and therefore it warrants the cost of advertising to them, and it's going to increase your performance. That's been around for a while, but tools like B2B and Clay are making this much more accessible. And I think emerging brands like startups, early and late stage stuff, are going to really dive into this during the next year.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is kind of every marketer's wish come true, because for how long did we say, if only we could turn all of those unknown website visitors into known leads? Like, what a wonderful world it would be. Now we know who they are. And to your point, some tools will go down to the contact level. You can see the exact person that's poking around on your site. This is huge. I think this is what we all wanted in general. I think it's ABM on steroids in a good way. And it's just a smarter way to spend your money. Why spray and pray when you can tell who's in market, who's interested in what you have to offer? How interested are they? Are they visiting your resources section? Are they visiting your pricing page? Like, you can really see where people are at in the journey in addition to seeing who they are. So I think if you're not taking advantage of this, it's a huge mistake. And I think you're just kind of flushing money a little bit. So I think this is going to be enormous in 2026.
Right, particularly since HubSpot, which bought Clearbit a few years ago now, has finally assimilated it and launched sort of signals under a buyer intent sort of tab. If you have Marketing Hub Pro, you've got this, you'll probably find it. And they're just turning it on. They're just providing some sort of guidance. It uses the credits that you already have. And so you're already paying for this and you've got it. And how much of your traffic it de-anonymizes, we need to still do the testing and see the data on that. But this is a tool that I think a lot of our clients and companies out there have already got. So, you can start testing it already. So I do see this being more broadly adopted. And then, so Nicole, if I can do this, do you think that we'll see a drop in the amount of gated content? Everybody hates filling in forms and being called by a salesperson. So do you think people are going to feel more confident in just going, okay?
Yes. And it's always been a struggle. What do we gate? What do we not gate? We've always talked about, you have to treat it as currency. Somebody's giving you their email address. In exchange, they better get something that's worth that email address. It's been this careful balance. You see people gating case studies. No, you don't want to gate that. You don't want to gate anything that you would pay somebody to read. I think this will dramatically decrease gated content, but I don't think that means it's the end of long form content. I think there's a giant difference there. The playbooks and the action plans and the how-tos that you normally would have just turned into a gated PDF and used for lead gen, the need for those doesn't go away. It just doesn't have a gate in front of it anymore.
Right. And if you've got the data behind it to know who's accessing it, then just remove the friction from it and you can kind of pick up contact with them through advertising, through outbound email, or just emailing them if they're already in your database anyway. And so that's really the dream on both sides. And so it did take a bit of sort of technical orchestration, but that's really coming together now. Brands will feel more confident investing in creating that long form content and then just releasing it if they've got the right sort of telemetry behind there. And so signals-based stuff is going to be the rage for 2026 if it's not already.
Yeah. And I think there's been so much conversation about it. I think maybe a few years ago, we all would have been kind of creeped out by it. Oh, Big Brother's watching me on someone's website. Or I think we're kind of desensitized to it now because everybody's talking about it. There's all these tools. It's what everybody wants. And so that creepy Big Brother is watching feel, I think we're past that.
Right. I do think the customization of your web experience still does need to be done sensitively. Mm-hmm. I don't love it when I go back to some websites and they say, "Hello, Morgan." And I'm like, wait.
Oh, that's creepy.
That's really weird. I don't love it. That's too much, even if you do know who I am. But, customizing the landing experience to offer what you think the visitor is looking for is totally fine. And then, I think we're all used to an email that serendipitously arrives in our inbox just after we've visited their websites. And of course, retargeting is totally unfair. Great. So those are the predictions for this year. I hope, Nicole, thanks for sort of going through those. I'm feeling good about this set. I think it's going to be an exciting year one way or another. I hope you guys all found that useful. Let us know if you agree or if you disagree. Whatever comes, we'll be walking you through all the changes as we go each week next year. I'm really looking forward to the year. And thanks for your time. If you enjoyed that, please follow us and we will see you all again this time next week.